Okay, I've got a treat for everybody today on the Income Flip podcast. I've got my brother from another mother, Jason Stubblefield. Jason, dude, it's been a long time. I'm excited
Yeah,
to catch up with you.
yeah. Likewise, man. It's been a minute, but yeah, good to catch up as always.
Well, I think we have to set the stage a little bit, or at least I'll set the stage a little bit on our relationship. Um, Jason was one of my OG grid attendees. He would come, he'd ask really good questions. And like before I know it, man, this guy's like buying multifamily properties all over the country, analyzing deals. And then I see you helping other investors buy deals around the country, probably through JVs and partnerships and all the rest. But man, bring me up to speed, right? How long has it been that you've been buying multifamily properties? And bring me up to speed with what your business looks like today.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, of course we go way back now, but I mean, you were such an inspirational leader, from what you were doing on the investment side and as an agent, and I always just, looked at you as someone to aspire to. Man, so salute what you're doing. I still see you're still helping people, man. That hasn't changed about you
That
throughout the
hasn't
years,
changed.
and I really admire that. As far as me, just quick rundown. I mean, the first apartment complex, I shared with you in the Grid platform, was back in 2016, and then since then, managed to scale up into some bigger assets. So overall, now since then, over that time, I've owned just a little bit over 1,100 units. We don't
Wow.
have that in the portfolio right now. We sold off
Mhm.
some during 21 and 22. It was a good time to sell. And now apartments is sort of where I've made my nest at, and more so on the affordable side now. Really looking at affordable housing where I can bring a little bit of just more who I am and how I like helping people into the business as well, which I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. Um, why don't we talk about your journey first,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, I always like to unpack why you got into real estate investing, why you chose the vertical you chose, right? Because I believe that what's really cool about real estate is that there is a vertical that fits your personality. If you're listening to this, there's a vertical out there that suits you well. And sometimes you have to find it. You've got to taste some things and find it. So how did you get into this? What got you started in the first place? And how did you land on multifamily and now affordable housing?
Yeah. So I mean, it started off. I started off like most people, rich dad, poor dad. Hey, got to go buy some real estate. Was in single family, and I had my family, right. So the first couple of deals I did was an investment. I had two single family investment properties, and then I had the home that me and my wife lived in and resting. All right, and that was the extent of my portfolio. But once I had babies, right, I'm looking at childcare costs. There was no way for me to continue to invest, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
during this time, the market was continuing to go up, prices were getting higher, and I couldn't do the 20% down payment. So I spent a long period of time, about 4 years, not doing any investing. Right? I was doing other things, was having babies, but that was about it. Working and having kids. And then I was like, I gotta get back into it. And there's a neighbor I had. His name is Kwame. Very very smart guy. But we were just talking one day. He was like, "Yeah, I got an Airbnb property here. I got another property here, another state." And he was just moving. He has all this young energy, and it just clicked to me. I was like, I've been off my grind. You know what I mean? Like I haven't done anything in 4 years. I'm just over here trying to
Survive.
yeah, try
Survive
to
the
survive,
babies. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, I wanted to invest, but I haven't. So that was really the catalyst for me to start thinking about how could I get back in the game. And when I did, I started thinking about single family, and I was like, how many of these single families is it going to take for me to, make a decent amount of income? And when I looked at that number, I was like, that's there's no way, right? It just wasn't going to work for me. And I mean, I'm pretty sure people do it, right? But they have strategies with using other people's money. I didn't. So I was like, how can I do this another way? and I went on a diet, man. I went on a real estate diet. So I run just about as often as I can. And every morning I stopped all the music. I stop everything. I'm just consuming real estate information. And heard people talking about apartments. Long story short, that's where I landed. And I was like, okay, apartments is where it's going to be at for me. And then that's what led into me pursuing that vertical out of everything that I could have did.
What's interesting, Jason, just for anybody listening, is that you actually sat down and thought about it and probably built a spreadsheet, knowing
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To ask yourself, how many single families do I actually really need to own in order to make this happen? And do I have the capital in order to make that happen, right? And for those that don't know, Jason uh, is an engineer by trade, right? So are you still doing engineering? Have you sunsetted that career and just doing this full time?
Yeah. So I'm no longer. I was doing software development, software engineering, and I'm not doing that anymore. I still think that way because
Yeah,
it's a very good way to think, but yeah, I'm not in the weeds anymore.
that's awesome, brother. That's awesome. So you did the analysis. You said I'm going to have to focus on apartments. What was it about apartments that captured your imagination?
The number of doors, and it was a shorter period, right? So the way that I actually navigated through apartments is different than what I initially thought. But I was like, okay, if I could buy 4 unit, then I can then go to an 8 unit, then I can go to a 12, and just the number of doors and cash flow was supposed to expedite my journey to get into financial independence. What I realized once I got into it is that you can actually buy deals, apartment deals at one multiple and sell them at a different multiple. That's more like a business term, but really there's cap rates, in multifamily. But you can drastically increase. And when I say drastically increase, I mean by the tunes of millions of dollars from one property that you buy if you do a reposition rehab on it and then sell it at a lot more. So what happened is once I realized that, I was like, oh, you can create a significant amount of wealth doing this that I didn't see another way of doing in single family.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit, right? Um, for anybody that owns a business, right? Like one of the interesting things where my brain has kind of evolved to is that I can go into a business, buy that business, fix that business, and sell that business for more, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because the realization I had was, wow, these are just like properties. I can go into a property, fix that property up, and sell that property for more, right? One is like, let's just dumb it down. One, like single family house, fix and flip, fix it, right? Buy it, fix it, and then sell it for more, right? And then take that money and then do it again or buy some additional assets. What you're saying is you discover that you could actually do that. You look at a building like a business and you can improve that business and improve that cash flow and thus improve the multiple and then sell it for more, right? And make more money and take some money off the table. Now, the concern I've always had about doing that, right? And not a concern, but just like a limiting belief on this is like, dude, if you buy a really good business and it's pumping out cash, why would you want to sell it? Right? Like, I feel like I'd be killing the golden goose. Like, I would take the money off the table. I just killed the golden goose, and now I got to go find another golden goose. But I also realize that people need to eat, right? You can't, uh, I call it you building a cash machine and build a wealth machine, right? I guess you could build your cash machine improving multifamily properties, selling them for more, taking that cash off the table, putting some of that money in your pocket, taking some additional money, buying more assets, or just 1031ing it, right? But like refinancing the property, putting that money in your pocket, right? So you're not paying tax on it. Uh, but like, what are your thoughts about killing the golden goose and to buy another one, right? Like,
Yeah,
does that ring a
yeah,
bell?
yeah. I mean, it all boils down to a person's investment strategy, right?
Yeah.
So, multiple ways that someone can be motivated to sell in this business. For one, it's just capital needs, right? This is real estate, so over time, properties get older. If you own a building, say a $10 million building, and suddenly You didn't estimate roofs, or you didn't estimate windows, and now you do that. That's a large check that you got to write. And if you don't have the money, sometimes it's like, well, let me just go ahead and sell it. Also, these investments are oftentimes put together with investors. So, same thing we do. So, right. So you may have a group of investors and they're not trying to live in an apartment or live. They're not trying to live in this investment forever. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So they want to
Yeah.
execute a business plan and then they're exiting. And then lastly, you have like what we're seeing now in the market where people just assets become distressed, where cap rates have gone up and suddenly the sale doesn't make sense, but you still got to take care of the capital needs and there's capital calls and suddenly you're forced to put a deal on the market. Combine that with just natural things in life, right? I know there were assets that I bought early on that I don't necessarily want to own now,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there's a reason behind every sale. Let's put it
Yeah.
like that.
So, Jason, let's unpack that, right? When you venture off into the abyss, I call it the abyss, right? You venture off and you're like, I'm going to buy apartments and I'm going to raise capital and then I'm going to buy apartments in other parts of the country. There's a massive learning curve that happens. Like life has a way to teach us lessons, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the lessons that you've learned along the way that you would tell your younger self? Like like if there's somebody listening, a younger Jason, about how to do this business. Here's what to do and here's what not to do. Go.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, I'll go through some from my first deal, right? So the first
Okay.
way I got burned is, we're buying these deals off of income, right? That's how you determine the valuation, how much money it makes. So first deal I bought, guy shows up and he says, "Hey, these are how much rents I collect." And I just foolishly took his word for it. And then a month or two after owning it, I'm like, "Man, where's all the money that you said that you were collecting? Because it's not coming in." And that was a big lesson learned. And so the first lesson I tell somebody is you always got to verify income. Like that's huge, but when you haven't done it before, you don't know. So you'll take somebody's word for it. So now on every deal we buy, we're getting bank statements, bank verifications. And if those don't check out, we have it in our contract that we can walk away on this deal, right? So we want to have it doesn't have to be exact, but if they're saying they're making 20, 30, 50 grand a month, where are you putting the money? It's got to be in somebody's account, and that account needs to reflect that. So that's one. Second thing on a deal that took me way longer than what I could have did is because I just tried to buy the thing. I didn't know that if you're buying value add apartments, you can get banks to finance the rehab. So they'll roll the rehab of the property in. I didn't know that. So the way I got burned is that I had enough money to close it and I was going to fix up a certain amount of units and then I was going to refi and everything was going to be great. Problem was by the time I could rehab a unit, another tenant would leave. And so I was essentially depleting my capital without increasing the income, which led to me running out of money.
Mm.
And now I had to figure out how I was going to rehab this property. So a deal that if I had known what I know now, I would have been in and out of this deal in 18 months, right? It ended up taking me 3 or 4 years to actually turn it over because I scrapped money from every place that I could in order to rehab more units, refi to rehab more units, and then finally got it to where it needed to be. So those are some of the things when you're doing things for the first time and you're not privy to what it takes. You make those types of mistakes and they
Sure.
they end up, they hurt you.
Well, the other thing, just as you're talking this through, right, is that when you buy a 30 unit building or a 40 unit building, the numbers get a little bit bigger than a single family house, right? Rental property. And so you have to have the cash reserves, you have to have the liquidity or access to liquidity in order to do that. Because I'm sure you were like, oh shoot, where am I going to get the money to finish this rehab? What stake do I have to sell in this property? Or what second position note do I have to offer? Right? Those are very real world, scary conversations you have to have with yourself. Right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It gets real fast.
It gets real fast because it
Yeah.
compounds, right? Like
Yeah.
leverage happens both ways. It compounds both ways. So, how have you learned to manage that? Because I really believe that when we put ourselves into situations like this, it's like sink or swim, right? You have to swim, and if you learn how to swim, you level up. You level up. Like think about the thing that scared you in 2016 compared to like what scares you today. They're
Hmm.
completely different,
Yeah.
right? Something
Yeah.
that would have been like, oh my God, the sky is falling in 2017 or 20 is like it's like, oh, that happened Tuesday, right? It's part for
Yeah.
the it's like you level up your
Yeah.
emotional strength and ability to do these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, how have you kind of fortified yourself in fire, or like what do you do, when shit does hit the fan as an investor? How have you learned to pivot, or how do you get quiet, or who have you gotten access to help you when you hit these roadblocks? Because there's probably an investor listening right now who's hitting a roadblock, and they're hitting that holy shit moment, Jason, where like, I'm done, right?
Yeah.
What what advice do you have for them?
Um, man, I think one of the biggest things through this, because there's a long list of things that go wrong in real estate. Um, you think about eviction, that can be bad. No, no, I could care less about an eviction. It's part of the business, right?
Yeah.
We've had deaths in properties, all right, and that's part of what happens too. It's like, all right, somebody died. We had a building burn down. We had a building in one of our apartment complexes catch fire. That happened. So I've
The
gotten
entire
sued.
building or like one
Well,
unit?
well, no, so in this complex there were 8 buildings and we lost one. So there were 8 units in this one. And yeah, and then the lawsuits come. So
Oh
with
shit.
that,
Well, yeah, Jason, that right there scares the hell out of me. So,
yeah,
um, knock on wood, haven't had that happen, right?
yeah,
What learning lessons did you learn through that experience that I can learn from or other people can learn from? Like, I had a friend of mine, this happened to her, and she wasn't properly insured, right?
mm-hmm,
And so she didn't have enough coverage
mm-hmm,
on the asset. And sh
mm-hmm,
and like a lot of times when you're talking to your insurance person, you're like, yeah, yeah, just get me covered. And then you
yeah,
don't really like know what you're
yeah.
covered for, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, luckily with that, I think when you go get into the bigger assets, these lenders they require your insurance, so they don't want to get burned because they're oftentimes your biggest investor. They're putting in 70-80% of the capital, so they want to make sure that they're protected. So a lot of times we're trying to fight with them, like we don't need this is overkill insurance. What you are
Mhm.
having us do right now. But as far as being able to handle that, I think it's internal. You know what I mean? You have to be the type of person that understands that as an entrepreneur, as a real estate investor, that shit goes wrong, and you have to trust in yourself that you'll figure it out, and have
Mhm.
a belief that nothing is going to really break you. Right? You
Mhm.
can always recover if you had to go start from zero or from scratch or whatever. You got to do something. And so with all those things, this is years in the making now, but at each time you figure out what the next thing is that you need to do, and then you try to do it. And so one of the frames that I try to use is to imagine myself, several years in advance. I think I got it from Alex Hormozy, right? He talks about this, but I've used it and I have several versions of doing it myself. But um sometimes I imagine myself older, sometimes I imagine myself, 1,000 years into the future and look back and just be like, all right, how did you get over this? What did you do? What lesson did you learn? And I sort of
Mhm.
talk back to me in the present from the future. This may sound crazy to whoever,
Dude,
but I
this
don't
is
I don't care.
so good. This is so good. I love
Yeah,
it. This is the juice.
yeah, but with that, it allows me to sort of reset and come at it from a way like, all right, this is just what has to happen. And at the end of the day, nobody's died. You know what I mean? This is business. You lost money, you made money. Um, well, I did talk about some people did actually die,
Yeah,
but you know what I mean. But it wasn't me, so I'm still living. So
yeah,
what am I gonna do
yeah.
with the rest of the time that I got here? So you really have to be okay with that. And I think that investors who try to um you don't want to be foolish, but when you try to make sure that everything's perfect, you end up just not taking action. So there's a fine balance to make between having that enough information to act on, and then saying like all these other things, the other 20% of unknown. You just got to be comfortable with that and trust yourself that you'll figure it out.
Yeah, it's funny. One of the things where I tell my leaders that run different offices, I'm like, nobody died. It's okay. Okay. It's all figure outable, right? We just figure it out. We move on. It's not a big
Yeah,
deal, because people make a lot of emotion. They get a lot of emotional drama around things,
yeah,
and you just have to see it for what it is. And you're like, listen, like we got to solve the problem. Let's just solve the problem, right?
yeah.
Let's not make it more complex than what it is.
Yeah, emotional intelligence is what you have to have, right? To be able to handle things and be like, okay,
What about on the finance side? Let's talk about that. There's somebody here that is listening and they want to get into buying their first, second, fifth, 10th apartment building, right? What advice would you give your younger self about that process?
um, learn marketing and sales
Mm,
early on and
mm.
understand that's the lifeline of every business.
Amen. Amen. Like, dude, it's everything, right?
Yeah, I unfortunately I could not believe how long I was in real estate as an investor without realizing that.
Yeah.
And I think that yeah, to each his own, right? As you're learning this business, you're trying to figure out, all right, even if it's a single family, how do I find the deal? How do I make an offer? Where do I get the money from? In apartment complexes, you're trying to understand cap rates and rent rolls and trailing 12. So there's the
Language.
business, yeah, there's the business that you're in, and then there's the engine behind that business. And that engine behind every business is marketing and sales. And so when you have that background, you now have the ability to go into any business and sort of understand it at its core and put all the pretty stuff on top, right? The ocean basically that's keeping the ship afloat. Now it's just a different ship, right? It's this type of boat, it's that type of boat, whatever. That's what you're doing. So if I could go back to my younger self, I would say learn that, become a monster at marketing and sales, and you can go very far in a lot of businesses.
Yeah. Is that why you were studying Alex? Because he is a
Oh,
monster.
oh,
at mar-
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. You got to pay attention to him. Yeah,
Dude, it's just an absolute monster at marketing and sales. I flew out to Vegas to do one of his workshops, and I, you know, I feel like I know a lot about business and about marketing and sales. And literally, I called my wife and I was like, I feel like it's the first day of school, right? It's like it just like I don't know anything, right? Um, and that's good. You want to put yourself in rooms with people that are just doing things at just a
yeah,
completely different level, right? To
yeah,
understand, like, okay, how are you making $1 million a month, right? Like how do you just pump that out in reoccurring revenue from multiple lines of business, you know?
yeah,
So it's pretty sick, right? Like I've gone on that journey myself. So anybody listening to this, like I'm a big proponent of you've got to learn the sales and marketing game. Like real estate is just a widget, whether it's a multifamily property, single family property, sub twos, they're just widgets, right? You could learn the widget. What you really need to get down though is how do you make that telephone ring? And once you make the telephone ring, how do you actually communicate with the other side in a way that they want to work with you, right? Because you could generate a lot of leads, but if you don't know how to sell, you're screwed, right?
yeah,
And so, the number of times I've seen people go to a seminar and the guru's there, like, spend all this money on postcards to get the telephone to ring. Yeah. And the person doesn't know how to sell or develop rapport or doesn't know what line of questioning. So you might as well have just burnt that. So go
yeah,
learn how to sell, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big thing. Right. Do you have any are you going these days a lot to direct to consumer to find your deals, Jason? Are you finding them from brokers or a combination of the two, or what's your strategy? And where are you
Yeah,
buying?
I'm in the camp of just going to brokers,
Yeah.
and the reason that I do that is because as you scale up in the apartment business, it's just less likely that someone is selling an asset because you sent them a flyer or they saw an ad from you, and it's a process, right? You got to court and date, and that's almost becomes another arm of marketing that you got to do just to go out and fill your pipeline with people who may or may not sell. Now, people do it and they crush it and that's it. But for me, I like already knowing there's a meal that I can eat there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And every deal I'm looking at, it's real. You know what I mean? So um, that's
Jason,
how I do it.
where are you buying these days? What areas where are you what's your buy box look like?
Yeah, yeah. So we're looking for 100 plus units in Tennessee, Georgia, which is where I'm at now, and South Carolina. With that, we like some affordable component to it. I can get more into the weeds of that, but we're also looking at some sort of rent advantage, meaning that tenants that lease our apartments are going to do a percentage better, right? There's a significant percentage better than they can if they weren't living with us. So we look for those types of things. Um, and yeah, it's really just trying to find in mass what you can do and then look for those deals. And brokers have off-market deals too, especially these days. They have a lot of off-market deals.
Yeah, what's the multifamily space? What's happening in the multifamily space right now?
There is a
And we're in the fall. Anybody listening, we're in the fall of 2025.
yeah, fall of 2025. I think that there is a how would I call it? There's like a collapse that's happening that's just sort of being fought off. And so, I mean, well, I think it may be a lot quieter than people are discussing on the news. But every time I talk to owners, I had a conversation earlier this morning. Somebody's like, "Hey, property management companies are losing portfolios of deals because the owner went bankrupt." Um, there are deals that are just got cracks all in them. We see deals now where you can look at and you can identify what the problem is. So, oh, you're losing money, right? So it's probably you don't know when to call the bottom of a market, but we're there. You know what I mean? We're at the lower end of this, and I think it'll take some time before it starts to build back.
Is it because a lot of people had cheap debt? That cheap debt then got, like their locks expired, and then all of a sudden they went from 3.5% to 6% or 7% or 8%, right?
Yeah.
And then and then everybody's been in this let's hope that rates come down. So they've
Yeah.
been treading water, hoping to
Yeah.
refinance out of some of these things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's exactly that. And I think
Yeah.
that the reason that the market hasn't necessarily overflowed is that people are trying to hold on to see what they can do until you get to the point where it's just like there's nothing else that you can do. And that's what's happening. I mean, if you look at your mortgage doubling, and now every investor, like you mentioned it earlier when you said things can compound in reverse. So now not only do you have the fact that rates double, but now you have all the investors that are looking for deals. So whereas they would have bought in my world, they would have bought a 6% cap rate a few years ago. Now the investors are like, I want 7. You know what I mean? I want a deal. So that compounds how low offers are getting made on some of these deals, and the owners have to like either you can wait out the storm or you got to bite the bullet and just say, hey,
Yeah, it
I'm gonna
depends
take a
on your
loss.
liquidity. Depends on your liquidity. Depends on your leverage. Depends, right? So, I talked to a developer yesterday who's doing a lot of stuff in DC, and he's like, I'm getting killed. They are. redeveloping like 70 units in the district, but permitting the flight out of DC because of crime. It just he's like, where interest rates are, he's like, dude, I don't see any end in sight, right? And he's essentially like, let's grab a cup of coffee, figure out what to do, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
those conversations are happening, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how do you protect yourself? So if somebody's listening right now, if we haven't scared you off, right? Um, what are some what is some thesis, strategy, philosophy that you've now embedded into your business, Jason, to help you as you continue to grow, right? Because scale for scale sake is not good. And more, I just did a post on this the other day, doesn't necessarily mean better,
Yeah.
right? Better
Yeah.
is better. And so, what are some of the things that you've done to or thought of to protect yourself?
Yeah. Fortunately for us, we had assets that we put long-term debt on.
Mm,
And that has allowed us to weather the storm. Now we still got some assets that aren't performing how they should, and dogs in the business, but
sure.
that is what it is. So two things that we're doing right now. One is looking at every new purchase on a longer horizon, which is 10 plus years. And so if you do that and you buy it with a 10-year horizon in mind, you have the ability to take it where it is today and weather the storm and not need to transact for another 8, 9 years, which can allow you a lot more flexibility. And when you look at a deal from a 10-year perspective, it forces you to be more conservative. In 10 years, we may have to do the roof. In 10 years, we may have to do the windows. 10 years, we're probably gonna need the parking lot. So a lot of the slap lipstick on the pig stuff goes out of the window when you start trying to say, hey, how can I protect myself and do it for a decade or more? So that's one thing. However, on the flip side of that, if you buy assets that way, you got protection, you're well capitalized, and you can weather the storms. You're not forced to sell. If the market is great to you, benefit from it and use it. If the market's bad for you, you got several years to wait it out. All right. So that's one. Um, the second thing that we're doing is starting to manage our own assets now. And so we've been doing third party property management and I love it. I tell everybody don't start off trying to manage your own deals. At this point, for us, it's good because on some of those assets, we've taken a deeper look at what's going on and just realized that you can't pay people to care. You know what I mean? You can pay people to work, but you can't pay them to care. And so in this business, it's hey, a property manager can easily just call somebody up and say, hey, give me a quote on this, take the first quote. This is what it's going to cost you is 20 grand. Right. Versus a good manager will try to say, do we even need to make that repair? Give me three quotes on it. One guy can fix it at 3 grand. This one's at 20,000. What do you want to do? And really just looking at every part of the business because as you mentioned, every apartment by itself is its own little business. Right. And so with that, you've got to have the ability to look inside that business and make good day-to-day decisions on it. So those are two things that we're doing: longer term debt, looking at in-house management where we can control every aspect and do some things that will be in our best favor versus in the manager's best favor.
What about raising capital?
Yeah.
What are you doing to raise capital, Jason? Is that a big piece of your business?
It is. It is. And it really boils down to relationship. So I'll tell you one of the things that I did or the way that I've grown is really not being as much of a capital raiser. Now, I'm sounding contradicting myself because you're like, well, Jason, raising capital is a big part. And what I do on every asset that we purchase is a portion of that goes to the people that are just day to day in the weeds of raising capital. And so my assets have grown by being able to take a little piece back, of the capital portion, and then being able to partner with someone else who knows me, who likes me, who trusts me, who understands the business, understands some of the assets that we've already purchased, and says, okay, this is a good place to park money. Now I raise capital myself as well, but
Oh, I see what
that's
you're saying. Yeah, you're using a third party person to raise capital, and you're giving them a piece of the deal, and they want to be invested in you, and they're invested in you, and they're good at raising capital, right? So you could
yeah.
be a good operator.
Exactly, exactly. And when you look at it, it's really the apartment business is probably at least two pieces, is probably more like three. So right, the capital raising, that's all marketing, that's all sales, that's all meeting new investors, accredited investors, getting them filling the pipeline there, nurturing them until they're ready to invest. Then you got the part of the business that's underwriting deals, that's networking with brokers, that's finding good assets to pursue. And then probably the third part is then once you buy them, you got to operate them. So it's multifaceted. Now in the beginning, you're doing all of that. You know what I mean? Because it's a smaller deal. You don't need that much capital. Investor or two can take care of it. But as you grow and expand, those things really become too much for one person to take on. And so if anything, if anybody's thinking about apartment complex, I like it because it forces you into the business aspect of real estate without trying to be a gunslinger and just do everything yourself. And a lot of people stay there and stay small because they don't think like a business. And apartments make you do that.
Yeah, I love that, man. It's I see that trap often with agents, right? Let's filter that through the agent or even the
Yeah.
wholesaler world, right? They get really good at the game of sales and marketing, okay? And they learn how to do deals. But what happens is that's a skill that they built, and now to help to transfer that skill to somebody else, to start letting go of that skill, right? Is incredibly difficult for them because that person is not going to be as skilled as they are. So there's like this like putting a little agent on training wheels or a wholesaler on training wheels. I'm like, come on, Bobby, you can do it, right? But then what happens is that person that got really good at selling takes it back because they're like, okay, this person's messing up the deal. They take it back. They're like, I can't keep any good agents. I'm like, no, you didn't, you haven't grown them. You haven't developed them. You haven't helped them. You're not thinking like a CEO. You're not thinking like a business person, right? You need to
Hmm.
give them the right scripts, and you got to give them the right thinking, and you got to give them the right energy, and you got to give them the right messaging, and right, you have to develop them. And so when you start a business, it's much harder to like to let go. But if you bought a business, right? If you bought a business and you think of yourself as like the owner of that business, then you say, no, there's sales and marketing, and I need to hire people to do that. And there's operations, I need to hire people to do that. I've often thought like agents should just enter into the idea of just like buying another business, right? Starting a business that way because it forces you. So I can see what you're saying. You buy an apartment building, you are forced to think like a owner, like owner, right? Let's not
Yeah.
say owner operator, just like as an owner, right?
Yeah.
And delegate because there's no way you could do it all yourself at scale, right? There's
Yeah.
so many apartment buildings. Like, what are you gonna go in and fix all of them, or be the handyman in all of them, or like do them? Yeah, you can't.
Yeah. Yeah. And
No.
yeah, a lot of people they take that mentality and they're like, oh, I don't want to buy out of state. And I'm like, that you can buy anywhere. Like, what are you gonna do? I'm like, I'm not handy at all. So yeah, I'm not coming over there to fix a leaking toilet. I probably struggle to put on a toilet seat. You know what I mean? But so you
Yeah.
might as well just think about delegating everything and stay in the ownership perspective. And I think that helps a lot.
Okay. Well, there's three pieces to this business, right? There's sales and marketing. There's the underwriting and acquiring the acquisition piece, and then there's the operations piece of that
Yeah.
business. And I would imagine as you develop, you will have a sales and marketing team. Maybe you don't have to, right? Uh, a acquisition team and an operations team, right? If you're really thinking like I'm going to build this into something big,
Yeah.
um, where do you want to take this, Jason? Like when you think about like this is the vision of my life, or this is what I think is possible, or this is the goal I'm trying to hit. Like, what is that for you? And that's a hard one. That's hard, right? Because it's like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
get it's hard.
yeah. That it's something that I've been toying with a lot here recently. So it's
Well, a couple
I'm glad
things
that you asked.
before you answer the question, Jason.
Yeah,
How old are you again?
I'm 45.
Okay, you're 45. Okay.
Yeah,
And your kids are how old?
my oldest is 13 and my youngest is 5.
Okay.
Yeah,
So like there's I just want to frame that, right? Because when you turn
yeah,
50, like when I turned 50, I was like, I'm 50, right?
yeah,
Like that there was a whole nother level of thinking.
yeah,
Um, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah. I think at the core of me, I want to help as many people as possible before, I'm no longer walking on 2 feet, right? So, in order to do that, I think about how everything that I'm doing is helping another person. So, I guess we can start off with the real estate. So, the reason that I chose to go into affordable housing is that it got harder and harder to justify the help of tenant base. And I mean, I grew up, lower class. You know what I mean? So I had, I won't say as much as in common, but I had a level of empathy for the tenant that's struggling to come up with rent, just as much as I had for the investor who had, $250,000 to invest with us. And so obviously the tenant is a larger pool. So thinking that through is what really tugged on my heart to say, how can we do something where we can make money, right, for investors. However, we can also structure it where we're giving the tenants a reasonable, affordable place to live. So that was one. And then secondly, I realized how many people struggle financially just in general. And so part of what I'm doing with, showing other people this business and how it works is about trying to fulfill that of saying how many people can I help escape or can I help set up their families, because a lot of people have that need, especially as they approach our age and older, where they're like, what am I going to leave? And so for me, it's one of those things with my kids where I'm like, when I'm gone, I can leave this apartment complex, especially the ones that we're doing on a longer play now, where I'm saying like, hey, you can take this and you can be all right. You know what I mean? You can take this and you're not starting from zero like I had to. So then that's where you get into the scale, and how do you do that? How do I amplify that and help as many people across those spectrums as possible? Not easy, but that's what I like to do, right? To have as big of an impact in those areas as I can.
Yeah, I love that, man. What you're doing is it's called self-actualization. Like there comes a point when like you've met your core basic needs. You know that you're going to be okay because you have a skill set. You could already see that money is compounding. It's compounded. You've got income coming in. And when I built this 7 levels of freedom framework, I have this 7 levels of freedom framework. I was like, at the very top of that is impact. You use the word, right? And impact always shows up in some way of giving. And if you're strategic about how you think about your business, they should be aligned, right? That impact should somehow it's what pulls you through the doing of what you do, because the doing of what you do isn't easy unless there's a bigger meaning behind it, unless there's a bigger purpose behind it. Like, for me, I was like, selling another house is empty, but helping families build wealth through real estate, that's a mission I can get behind, right? So I help families build wealth through real estate. Some of them might just be buying their first house, right? And so my sales team will help them fulfill that mission. But then I want my sales team to help them understand this is just the first home of maybe many properties. I want them to think about what their world could look like. And we have a vertically integrated business. So we have like construction, property management, title, mortgage, right? Hard money lending. So it's like, okay, if my mission is to help like everyday people build wealth through real estate, then they're going to need the picks and tools and the access access to do that, right? So can we help with property management? Can we help with title? Can we help with mortgage, right? So we started creating these vertically integrated businesses, all to serve the consumer who was on that journey of wanting to build wealth through real estate, right? And so I was like, I can get behind that. Like I can get behind that mission because, like you, I've seen so many people struggle, right? Just struggle, right? Like affluent people struggle. Like what people don't understand is like sometimes you see people that look like they have a lot of money, they're struggling, right? Because
Yeah.
nobody showed them financial discipline, right? You sometimes you see people that don't look like they have a lot, and they're not struggling financially because they live well below their means, and so good book for everybody to read, The Psychology of Money. Go read that book, right? It's a book about thinking. And so I was like, okay, we're on a mission to help people build wealth through real estate. So a lot of that comes through financial literacy and education, right? So I love that, man. If there's anything that we can do within our network to help support your vision, like we're there, right? Also, I just kind of want to say we have a real affordability crisis in this country. So we're trying to bridge that gap as well. I'm like, how do we create like where do we want to play and deploy dollars, right, in the future? Is it through investing in affordable housing? Is it building affordable housing? Is it creating ADUs, right, for affordable housing? Like what is it? There's a gap, right?
Mhm.
And can we be the bridge of that gap? And which, by the way, does a good thing and makes you money because there's a wave there, right?
Yeah.
The problem, the way you make money is by solving problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and it feels good to
Yeah.
solve that
Yeah.
problem,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely, man. I mean, it's a challenge, but we got kids, and I'm thinking about like how do they afford rent these days, and if you got to start out in your first home, and is 450,000 as a starter, right? That's the going market rate because of the area in. How do you ever get home ownership? And I think there's a fight to be made. So I'm glad that y'all are thinking about that.
Yeah, my daughter's 23, and so
Yeah,
I'm like, how is she going to, you know, um, like how is she going to afford like her first place? I'm like, that's
yeah,
gonna be hard. I was like, mom and dad have lots of places that they could give her a place, but we don't we but I also know that you need to make the child struggle because struggle is where they kind of like build their self-worth,
yeah,
right? So like
yeah,
there's this balance between helping her
yeah,
and not making it too easy because they've got to also earn their stripes, right? Like you said something, I was like, hey, I came from nothing, I'm building something, and now they'll have something. I'm like, yeah, yeah. And like you got to be careful if you leave too much
yeah,
because
yeah.
then
Yeah, I think that's one of the goals of parenting to say, what's that analogy? Like you're on a tightrope, but you got a net underneath you. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
yes.
I'll make sure you don't fall and break your neck or die. But you know what I mean? But you still gotta stay up there with your, high beam
That's
analogy,
actually a
whatever
good
it is.
way.
But
That's a great way to think about it for
yeah,
sure. Right.
yeah,
Like, yeah, you feel like you actually have like support. If something was to go wrong, the bank of Jason could could maybe bail them out once, right?
yeah, yeah.
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 Okay, man. Well, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, how would they do it?
Um, So I'm on all social media platforms,
Okay.
some capacity, mainly just Jason Stubblefield. Google me. I'm not that hard to find, and then just reach out.
Cool. We'll make sure that we link all of your bios and everything to this episode. Okay. Couple of rapid fire questions before we leave. Okay.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Okay. Um, Jason, what are you reading right now?
Honestly,
How are you growing?
what was that? How am I growing?
Yeah, how are you growing? What are you reading that's like helping you grow?
Yeah, I'm not into. So I'm going back to some of the older things that I've read. So The Science of Getting Rich is one of the books that I like.
Hmm.
Alchemist is really like my all-time favorites. And so right now I'm more I'm more looking for those nuggets that can get me to another level. So it's been a lot of just piecing things together. But those are two books that I just go back to
What do
a
you
lot.
love about The Alchemist? I'm curious.
The I think it's a good story to tell about the challenges of life and sort of give it all meaning to understand that you can go through stuff and there's a deeper meaning behind it being the person that you become. So even in that book, even though I don't want to give it away, but there's some questions that'll make you think like, is this meaningless or not? And I think that that book is really good at helping to put it in context, and it's an enjoyable read.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Um,
And may I add that a lot of times, if you're anything like me, or probably like you, Rob, you go out to do something that is supposed to be meaningful, fulfilling, and good, right? Like you're trying to bring good value in the world, and suddenly life just starts kicking you in the teeth, and you're like, "Why is this happening when I'm trying to do something,
mm,
something that's good?" So,
mm.
I think it's a good reminder that you're going to have challenges no matter what. And and now I'm just on this, but you said before that there are talk about humble beginnings and all of that. But even people who own billion-dollar portfolios, you just have bigger losses. You know what I mean? The guy's like, oh, I lost $9 billion. You know what I mean? That's still catastrophic, right? Equity. So I think that book is a good one to be able to tie in all those things and give the reader some value there.
Yeah, I think to go a little bit deeper on this, right, is there's no escaping life. Everybody comes out of life like leaves this life with scars.
Yeah,
And yet those scars are what make us stronger, help us create empathy for our fellow man. We're forged in fire. Like I would always say, we're forged in fire, right?
yeah,
And sometimes the hotter the fire, the deeper the fire, the stronger you are, that you actually become. So it's like you you never want to welcome that into your world, and yet you need to, like, that which you take in only makes you stronger, right? Strangely enough, my high school quote senior year was, that which does not kill me only makes me stronger. Okay.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that came from, I wrestled, right? And
yeah,
wrestling, like, sometimes takes you to, you feel like you're gonna die, of like, wasn't eating, wasn't drinking water, was working out, like, all the time, like an insane lunatic. And yet,
yeah,
like, when I competed and won, like, the level of self, I mean, just like, I was proud of myself, man. I was like,
yeah,
dude, I came out of the other side of this hard thing, and I know what I'm made of, and yet it was so hard and so painful, and yet, I would wish that on people, and yet you don't want to wish hardship on people, and yet if they go through the hardship and they can go through it with the right mindset, amazing things happen on the other side of that, right? So, Nietzsche also said, I wish you hardship. Like, I know the exact quote, but he's like, I wish you hardship and pain and, like, suffering, because only then do you actually know what you're made of, right?
yeah. True, true. Yeah,
And that said, brother, I only wish you prosperity, love, energy, hope, right? Like, I want all good things to happen to you. And yet I know life will always throw curveballs, and that's just part of it. So if you're listening to this and you feel like you've got a curveball going on in your life, the strategy is just keep moving forward. Just keep moving forward, one step at a time. Little
yeah,
bit, little progress every day, you know?
yeah. Absolutely, man. And yeah, just salute to you, man. Every time I hear you talk or see you or having a conversation like this, man, it's always inspiring. I know you have a heart of giving, and you do it a lot, and you help a lot of people, man. And so I really salute you for that and what you're doing, man.
I said I'll end it, but I will end it here, right?
Yeah,
I really believe that entrepreneurship is like whether you're, buying apartment buildings, fixing and flipping, an agent, own a construction company, title, mortgage, whatever. Man, it's hard. It's hard. It's not easy. And it almost feels like the right thing to do to be a guide for that next generation to help them even just a little bit to make
Yeah.
their life better if we can somehow contribute that way, which is why I even started grid in the first place back in the day, because I
Yeah.
I remember I had made so many mistakes. I said, well, I think I'm qualified enough to tell people what not to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What not to do. And and that's been a blessing to be able to meet cool people like you and watch you grow, right? And watch people blossom, right? And yet I know you, even though we're not connected every day, I know who you are because what you do is the same thing I do. We're on this journey. Like I always say, being an entrepreneur, owning a business is really as much of a spiritual journey, right? A growth
Yeah.
journey as
Yeah.
anything else, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Only for the few and the brave, brother.
That's it, man. Prepare for the test. It's fun though.
Okay, Jason. Thanks so much, man. I
All
appreciate
right.
your time.
I appreciate you, man. Take care.